All right, welcome back to Sunrise. The polls may be closed, but the process isn't over. Recounts are underway and the implications could be significant too. And to help us unpack it, we are joined by Giovanni Dennis, Managing Editor of News and Current Affairs here at CVM.
Well, you know what? Hold up now. You introduced him as the Managing Editor of News and Current Affairs. What you guys did not know is that he's also a sprinter. Who sprinted it here? Hi, have you caught your breath?
Still running left me, but me soon catch it up.
All right, Giovanni, talk to us. What is happening now? Where are we up to as far as the recounts are concerned? What are the numbers looking like? Any adjustments?
Okay, so firstly, the counts are not yet finished. So in all 63 constituencies, the final counts are taking place. So it's not a recount of yet of any sort. It's really the final count. What happened on Wednesday night was the preliminary count. Usually from the preliminary count, based on the gap between the parties, you usually know that, you know, that won't change significantly, even if it's 1 or 2 votes. So if a party wins by in excess of 1,000 votes, 1,500 votes, 2,000 votes or more, you don't expect anything to change there significantly. Where the issues arise now are where the count is really close. There are 2 such instances in this election. Kingston Central, where the PNP's Steve McGregor, retired lawman, he won by 12 votes. And let me just try to pop up and tell you the exact count that he got. So in his seat, he polled over 4,000, a little over, just under 5,000 votes. And the JLP's incumbent, Donovan Williams polled 12 less than him. I think 4,427, and he polled 4,439. So that's being observed right now closely, according to the chairman of the Manifesto Committee on the JLP, Camilla Johnson-Smith. She mentioned that yesterday, as well as St. Mary's Southeastern, where Christopher Brown of the PNP unseated the incumbent Norman Dunn, and he won by 11 votes in that seat. And so that one, let me just quickly give you the numbers. So Brown polled 6,642 votes to Dunn's 6,631. So there are some issues right there. Already we saw yesterday it was reported that 2 of the ballots cast in favor of Brown were rejected. This is what Norman Dunn said, but the final count is still taking place. That's something that we are watching keenly. And coming out of that now, the parties may decide the next steps that they want to take.
You know what I want to find out quickly? What necessitates the magisterial recount?
Right.
What kind of conditions?
Right. So if the parties feel, and again, just to paint the full picture for the viewers, the recount is a very slow process. You know, the preliminary count, it starts after 5 o'clock sometime, probably about 5:30 on the day of the election, and they finish, we know the election results by 10:30, 11 o'clock, thereabouts. For the recount, it's a painstakingly slow process. So they have the EOJ officials at the returning officer, as well as the ARO, that's the assistant returning officer, representatives of the candidate or the candidate, him or herself, on either side. And, you know, so people are there keenly watching every single vote. Everybody has to be comfortable. This good with you, this good with you, this good with you. All right, bam. Next one. So that's a painstakingly slow process. Now, if the representatives or the candidate of that constituency that ran feel like, for example, a ballot was rejected that they felt the intention was very clear of the voter. Let's say they say, is an X must put beside the XR bill, and I decide to put a tick becoming a follow instructions. If the intention is very clear in those cases and the officials still reject that ballot, the parties can file what they call a magisterial recount, and so that is what is happening. And that has happened already. That's something that happens quite frequently. In the last general election in 2020, there were magisterial recounts in St. Anne Southeast. That's a seat that Lisa Hanna won. She defeated the JLP's Delroy Dobson by 32 votes. And I remember her saying afterwards, you know, if everybody did win, they'll be smiling them 32 teeth. So that was a big thing there, and they did a recount in that seat. It also happened when in Westmoreland Eastern, where the JLP's Luther Buchanan was the incumbent, and he was defeated by Daniel Lawrence of the People's National Party. That also went to a magisterial recount that saw Daniel Lawrence winning. So it's not uncommon for votes to go to a magisterial recount. And so that's what we're watching keenly right now. The parties are both on edge of it, because less than a dozen votes, a dozen or less, that is really close when you're looking at thousands of votes. So that's where we are with
But
that.
you mentioned Westmoreland East, same question. I mean, I hear that there are recounts happening, especially there, or I would have already been completed there.
Okay.
Talk to us about the special case that Westmoreland Eastern is now.
Right. So I was just referring to the last general election in 2020 when Daniel Lawrence had won.
Isn't currently that same constituency?
That one has been declared for Dayton Campbell, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
But in instances like those, let's talk a bit about, so we have recounts happening, and you just mentioned how many people are in the room observing.
Right.
We as citizens of the country, knowing that we would like a true and fair and transparent election, should we feel good knowing that no, the process is very efficient, there are many eyes involved, it is painstakingly detailed as you just described, or could we actually make improvements that it doesn't have to require that, or no, it's a system that works? What's your take?
It really is a system that works. I haven't heard, at least at no point in recent memory, any candidate coming out feeling that they have been wronged. And remember, again, after the final count that happens with the representatives of each, it's not like it's being counted in secret,
Right.
The candidate can be there, or a representative of the candidate, meaning a lawyer for them or anybody, or an observer. For each side, by the way, plus the returning officer and the assistant returning officer. So it's something that's done transparently. And again, even if after that final count that you were there and you saw, you still feel like you need to take it further,
then
you can file for a magisterial recount with the lawyers of the party. And the parties in the past used that option. And again, yesterday, Kamina Johnson-Smith, she hinted that they could be using that option in those two seats that they lost very closely by less than a dozen votes in each instance.
There, in all our elections around the region, Guyana just had an election as well, and we saw former Prime Minister Bruce Golding in his brown vest.
He was the head of a CARICOM Observer Mission.
There you go.
Well.
So speaking of the CARICOM Observer Mission, we had comments made yesterday from the representative that was here for the CARICOM Observer Mission, and she spoke to what she said. Obviously, you don't quote me, but in essence, what she said was, Jamaica is quite ahead in the region, and her take was the system is very efficient. There are lots of notes that they can take to implement throughout CARICOM. What say you on that, on her take?
It's true. We are aiming for perfection, though, and because of how we are in Jamaica, and I'm just speaking as a journalist as well, because we are the ones. I was questioning the Director of Elections yesterday and lead story, Glasspool Brown. And I did make the point even before asking the first question that it was a relatively incident-free general election and things went fairly smoothly. Where we had issues was where they were doing a pilot of the electronic voter identification system, what they call the EVIS, in about 7 constituencies. In 3 of the constituencies there were issues, and in 4 of them everything went smoothly. But because of how we are, and Jamaicans speak up, in those 3 constituencies, people were very vocal. It happened in a few constituencies across the corporate area. And so there were delays of more than an hour for some people, and some people left and go home. Now, if it's even 100 people out of the 800,000 who left and go home and don't come back, it does make a difference.
Yes.
And I heard Dr. Christopher Tufton of the JLP lamenting that fact yesterday at the press conference. And so because we have the parties raising those concerns on both sides, by the way, about the delay in people getting to cast their ballots and people leaving, we have a duty to ask these questions of the officials that are responsible for overseeing the election and the electoral process. It doesn't mean, however, that this should cast a shadow on the entire system or the entire process.
Exactly.
It simply means that where there are issues, we as journalists have a duty to call and to raise the issue. However, in raising that issue, though, it's not to create the impression or give the idea so that everything popped down or the system is not working. We really are not that bad at all. And in fact, we are good. We're doing well. And I think it's essential that I make that point clearly, because Guyana, that country which had their election on Monday, I think yesterday they finally declared that Irfan Ali, the incumbent, was returned to power. So I've never heard that happen here in Jamaica. We don't know who win the election on the actual day of the
typically know the night of.
We know on the night of, or actually have a general idea fairly.
The system is set, but I wonder if they're going to consider one day, perhaps like in the case where somebody would have gone, waited too long, went home, and since the recount is happening, say, hey, I didn't get a chance to vote because I was there, I spent time a good hour and a half. Can I vote today? But anyway.
Or perhaps they can introduce mail-in ballots here in Jamaica, you know.
Well, the system is being improved, and I can say that the EVIS, which is the electronic voter identification system, the very purpose of that is to make the movement and the flow more streamlined and move quicker. Yes. Bam, gone, boy. I mean, it didn't work out as well as they wanted to this election, but that's the aim. And so, yeah, expect improvements going forward. And again, the parties will be meeting, both political parties along with EOG officials to examine the process and to look where they can improve. And I trust that we will get the improvements and that they have Jamaica's best interests at heart.
And I trust that we will pay close, keen attention to those 2 seats, because that's going to be real interesting. 12 and 11, I know nothing, you know?
Really?
Hey, I know nothing, you know? Yeah. Let's see what happens there. It's always great to have you in studio. That was Giovanni Dennis giving us the breakdown on the recount, or the official count, we should say. Up next, another familiar face takes over the fort with a look at the schoolboy football 2025 kickoff weekend. So please stay with us. We have Jordizzle in the building.
STGC Judges.
I don't think.
Yes.
Jordan is going to appreciate that. He's a Woolmans man, and you chant STGC. He might chant for him team, but you can't do that after Jordan name. It sounds like him got George. The man is a Woolmarian.
I said before him come around here.
We're going to a break.
I've said before him reach.